On our bulletins, I've already heard it twice today. Always pray to have eyes that see the best in people, a heart that forgives the worst, a mind that forgets the bad, and a soul that never loses faith in God. Line 2, eyes that see the best in people. Wow. As Christians, when we're looking at the evil in the world, how do we see the best in people? We have to see the best as there's somebody inside there that doesn't have to do the sin they're doing, and it doesn't have to be lost. And that's what my sermon's about. In our scripture today in Sunday school, the very last verse, Jesus is telling the Pharisees who've been making a judgment on him by some stuff he was doing, and he said, stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. In other words, stop seeing it the way you want to see it and use common sense and check someone's motive out. See where they're coming from, empathize with them. Jesus also said elsewhere, people misquote it all the time. They say, judge not lest you be judged. They leave out the second part of that. What Jesus actually says is, judge people the way you want to be judged. Now, I don't know about you people, but I want to be judged with mercy and love. And if I'm doing something wrong, tell me. Frank, you don't need to be doing that. God doesn't like it. But don't come up to me and put some throw down on me, throw me to the ground, stomp on my head and say, you got to stop doing that, you lowly sinner. Because I will not listen to you if you do it that way. And that's the point of my sermon. I do not condone sin, and God doesn't condone sin either. That's a long introduction. It wasn't written down, but my sermon is, if we have not love, what have we got? I believe there are some Christians that hinder the spread of the gospel. They don't intend to. They mean well. And this message is both for believers and for unbelievers. Jesus told us to love God first command, and then he said love everybody else. And when he told the religious people that they should love other people, he said, love them like you love yourself. And then when I first read that many years ago, I was like, wow. What does he mean? Here's what he meant. They loved themselves a lot. They went around with all their stuff geared up. We talked about it in Sunday school. They made sure everybody know how religious they were, and they loved themselves a whole lot because they kept the rules that they made up. They were very narcissistic. So Jesus was saying, you love other people like that, like you're loving yourself right now. Put them first is what he meant on that. The George Barna Group, they do surveys. And in 1996, 85% of Americans who didn't have any sort of church affiliation, they thought Christians were pretty good people. In 2009, they did the same survey, and when they were asked about the evangelical Christians, only 3% thought Christians were nice people. That blows my mind. Why would people not think we were good people? How can anyone not like someone that is a disciple of Jesus? After all, if we're disciples of Jesus, what do? We love one another, certainly. We're believers together. We love our enemies. That's what Jesus said. So everything in between we are supposed to love. Okay? Every other person on the planet is supposed to be more important than ourselves. So how can people not like us? What's changed? Philip Yancey, he wrote a book called Vanishing Grace. And he interviewed a bunch of people and talked to them, and the book's very interesting. And anyway, I'm quoting out of that. It says this: non-believers nowadays tend to regard evangelicals as a legion of morals police determined to impose their notion of right behavior on others. To them, Christians are anti-abortion, anti-women, probably anti-sex for that matter, and most of them homeschool their children to avoid defilement with worldly children. Christians sometimes help with social problems, say by running soup kitchens and homeless shelters, but otherwise they differ very little from Muslim fanatics who want to enforce Sharia law on their societies. Wow. Notice that they didn't see the people that he was talking to didn't see the qualities that Jesus had. Now, I wish that somebody said, well, he's a very caring person. He shows love when other people can't show love. He cares about other people. Nobody else would step in to help out, and this Christian did, but none of that gets mentioned, and that bothers me. Yancey came to a conclusion, and I agree with him. We probably need to stop calling the people of the world evil. We probably need to stop calling them, "You're not saved." They're not. But it turns people off when you tell them that. Maybe we need to start calling them lost. You're lost. I don't want you to be lost. I want you to find your way. Imagine being lost in the woods. You go for a hike, and you inadvertently walk off the path. You're gone for 3 days. You're starving. You're torn up with thorns. It's ripped all your clothes, and you've been terrified at night. You're freezing to death, and rescuers are looking for you, and you hear them coming through the woods, and you say, "Here I am, here I am." And one of the rescuers he can't even see you, and he's 100 yards off, and he goes, "Yeah, we're here. Why did you get off the path, you fool?" Would you be glad to see him? Yeah, you'd still be glad because you got some clothes and some food, but how would you feel? I think sometimes we're coming across that way when we're trying to help people that need our help so desperately. I think that's why Jesus attracted the crowds that he attracted. He did miracles, absolutely. We talked about it in class this morning, though. He also taught to the common man. He speak to the common people. And they were attracted to him. If we want unbelievers to hear what we have to say, we have to really care about what's inside, and that's their soul. They may be doing something horrible. They may be doing something we know is going to send them to hell, and we need to be concerned about it. But we still need to love them. We need to love them into wanting to be saved and not being lost. They'll want what we have, which is Jesus, when we walk up to them when everybody else is screaming things at them. Missionaries. When missionaries go into the field nowadays, they go to people who have never heard about Jesus. They take them food. They make sure they have water. They build them homes. They build them schools. And lo and behold, the people want to hear what they have to say. Jonathan Hacks, who was the former chief rabbi of Great Britain, said that the supreme religious challenge is for us to see God's image in one who is not in our image. The priest Henry Newen, he stated that humility is the real Christian virtue. When we come to realize that, we know that only God saves people, then we are free to serve and we can live humble lives. Christians need to serve and love the lost. Then the lost will become interested in what it is we have to give. When Jesus was with the woman at the well, he knew the life she was leading. He knew the life. He told her to go get her husband. And she said, "I don't have a husband." He goes, "You're right. You've had 5 and you're living with some other guy now." So he told her what he said, but he just said it. And he went on and he offered her living water. What did that lady end up doing? She went and told the whole village, "Hey, come see this guy." Hellfire and damnation sermons and rhetoric are absolutely needed sometimes. Absolutely. And when you look at the New Testament, except for the 4 Gospels. They're all written to sinners that are messing up. They know better. Hellfire and damnation. Yep, y'all need to do better because y'all know better. The people out there don't know better yet sometimes. But before we get to that part of the New Gospel, when we're in the 4 Gospels, before we get to the rest of the New Testament, we see how Jesus lived and we see how He wants us to live. He wants us to be humble and gentle. Ephesians 4:2 also says, be completely humble and gentle, be patient. It's hard sometimes. And not everybody's easy to love. Especially when you see the kind of stuff we talked about in Sunday school. You see all these people running around doing all these horrible sins that are going to get them in hell, and they're just destroying our world. But Jesus said love our enemy. So, we've got to try. You know, in 1 Corinthians chapters 11, 12, and 13, you can turn there if you want. I'm not going to delve into it real deep, but you know, in chapter 11, Paul tells us how we're supposed to worship. And then he moves on to spiritual gifts in chapter 12. And he reminds us that we're a church. We all have different gifts. We need to work together, you know, for the glory of the kingdom, the glory of God. And then he's moving on to 13. They call it the love chapter. You know, many weddings have this all about love. It tells all about love, and I'm going to spend some time in there. But before he gets there, chapter 12, the very last part of the last verse, he's told us all these things. Here's how you do church. You have these gifts, use them. You're all one team together. And then he says, now I will show you the most excellent way. I'm going to show you the best way to take care of virtually any situation you come across. And he gets into the love chapter. He points out in the next few verses that love is more important than 4 things that Christians stand on solidly. It's more important than spiritual gifts. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If he can speak like an angel, nothing more than a noisy gong. Now in the first century they had gongs and cymbals. You'd go up to a temple and you'd hit it to wake up the God that was sleeping inside, so maybe he would hear your prayers. That's what he's referring to. He said, I was so blessed I could speak so wonderful, but I don't have love, then my life is just like that gong. It's banging for no real reason. In verse 2, Paul says, love's more important than knowledge. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, but I have not love, I am nothing. Even if we know it all, Paul is saying, if we know everything there is about nuclear science, about medicine, philosophy, psychology, any other ology you can think of, even if we're a doctor of theology, know every verse in the Bible, backwards and forwards, know every rule God has. We know what Jesus thought of the Pharisees of his time, don't we? But if we know all that stuff, have all this knowledge, if we don't have love to go with it, it's nothing. Corinthians 8:1, knowledge puffs up, makes us think we're smart. Love builds up. It will build up people. They will want to know more about Jesus than you. And by the way, it also builds us up while we're giving it away. Knowledge leads to arrogance. Arrogance towards God is idolatry. It's sin. It's a sin of pride. Arrogance towards others is not showing love. It's not putting them first. The hearts of our people have got to be changed somehow before our society will. We can't count on our government. Yes, I pray for our government leaders to live and do more godly principles. Absolutely. But it's up to us too. We have to change the hearts of the world by showing Jesus to them. Third, Paul says that love is more important than faith. Now, he's not saying that faith is not important. I mean, we're all saved by faith, right? He just says that love is more important. If I have a faith that can move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. If I walked back there and put my hand on Drew and touched her and I said, "Be healed," and everything happened and she was healed perfectly, but I was only doing it to show off, it would mean nothing. It would mean nothing. So what about our faith? What do we believe this morning? Do we believe that God's creator of the world? I'm asking, do we?
Amen.
Yep. Do we believe that Jesus Christ was His only begotten Son, came into our world, lived a sinless life, died on the cross for us, buried, rose on the third day? Yeah. Do we believe He's sitting up there at the right hand of the Father getting everything ready for us? He's going to come back? Yeah, we all believe that. Great, I commend us for that. But if we don't have love, what are we going to get accomplished? Matthew 22, 34 through 40. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested Him with this question: "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law, in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love your Lord your God with all your heart," not part of it, "and with all your soul," not part of it, "and with all your mind," not part of it. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is what I mentioned in my introduction. As yourself. They were so wrapped up in themselves, they loved themselves, and they thought they were so godly. And He was saying, you love them like that, the other people. Put them first. And then He said, all the law and prophets hang on those two commandments. The priest and the Levite in the parable of the Good Samaritan, they had faith, they were righteous. What'd they do? Guy laying over there on the road. And he went across the street and went on by. That's not love. Galatians 5:6. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Now Paul is talking to people that had gone back into what's called Galatianism. They are forms of it today. They say, oh, you got to live by the law. You got to live by the rules. You know, faith in Jesus is not enough. And he was saying, wrong, wrong. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Not all the wondrous things that you're doing out there, not all the rules that you're keeping. Do we express love to the lost? Fourth, Paul says that love is more important than generosity. If I give all I possess to the poor, surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. He doesn't say if I give 10%. He says if I give everything. If I take my checking account, my savings account, and I give it to the poor, and I give it to everybody, I cash in my insurance policies, I give everything I can to help everybody, but I don't really love them, then he's not gaining anything. Generosity is not enough by itself. We have to love. We have to give with the right motive. You know, do we give to the church because the preacher says you need to do it? Do we give because people see us doing it? Wrong motives. As Christians, we show love by giving of our money, of our time, our efforts. Not only to each other, yes, we should do that. The Bible tells us we should take care of each other as believers, but also to the lost. Love is very important. I think it's a lot more important than some Christians today understand. Jesus in 13:34, a new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. How much did Jesus love us? Okay, nail me to the cross. I'll do it for all these people from now on that are going to sin and hate me. I'll do it for them. That's how much He loves us. And it's a commandment He's telling us to do it, not a suggestion. We tend to think that love is something that happens, because that's what the world's teaching us. I read yesterday of an actor and his wife were splitting up after 27 years, and then they said something about we've decided to just go our separate ways or something like that. We feel like, they think love's like falling in a ditch or something. It's accidental. Or you fall out of a tree. You fall out of love. It's just like falling out of a tree. It didn't mean to happen. It just happened. Can't help it. But the Bible teaches us that love is a commitment. In a marriage, it's a covenant. God and the couple. But it's a commitment. He commands us to love each other. It means we can decide to love every single human being, no matter how bad they are and no matter what sin they're engaged in. And that's what I am telling you Christians are supposed to do. That does not mean that God is going to judge people for that sin. That does not mean that we condone the sin. But we have to come across with the love to get them to understand they sin. That's the point I'm trying to make. Paul says that love is more important than spiritual gifts, knowledge, faith, generosity. In Philippians 2:4, each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. Think about others and their interests before we put ourselves first. We become unselfish. We start thinking this way. We start thinking that every other person on the planet is a child of God. They just need to know it. They may not know it yet, but we need to try to get them there, and we love them. Think about how that would work in families. Okay, suppose every person in a family, every spouse, started thinking that way. We'd start with the spouse. We'd be kinder, more tender, more gentle, and they're sitting there acting like a jerk maybe, and they'd be going, what are you doing? What are you hiding from me? You're being too nice. I mean, I guarantee you that some people would say that in some relationships. And then it filters down. We share that with our children and our in-laws. The old ma-in-law jokes that we used to hear, ma-in-law be loving you because you be loving her. And then it gets into the church family. Then it gets out into the world. Jesus said, by this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. That's the way the world can find out the message of Jesus Christ. If we love the way Jesus loved us, we have to develop compassion for the very people that we see out there doing things that we hate. We're called to be disciples. We're called to make disciples. People don't understand the definition of a disciple. It's a word that gets thrown around. Here's the official definition. A student who adheres to a teacher in a pedagogical relationship. Now, I've only got 2 years of college, and they were 50 years apart, so I had no clue what that meant. So I'm going to tell you. What pedagogical means is following the same methods as the teacher. So to be a disciple of Jesus, we follow His methods. Love, humble, other people first, checking on the physical needs of others, the Sermon on the Mount. Be lights to the world, do good deeds so people will praise God through you, Jesus said. Don't be angry with others. Turn the other cheek when assaulted. Love enemies. Give to the needy and don't brag about it. Pray for others. Forgive others. Judge like we want to be judged. Again, he didn't say judge not. He said judge like you want to be judged. He did say that, but he added another verse that gets left out. In Matthew 7:12, so in everything, he didn't say so when you want to, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. When we look at people in the world that need Jesus, we need to empathize. Put yourself in their shoes. Reverse it. You're looking at someone that's in a sin, doing something bad. Reverse it. Put yourself right there. How would you want them to judge you? That's the way we do it. Have you ever seen anybody caught up totally in a movie? Or have you done it yourself? I'm really bad about that. It's empathy. You look at the movie and the actor or actress is crying and the person's crying with them. The person gets mad in the movie, you get mad too. They get happy, you get happy, etc., etc. You're empathizing with that character. It's compassion. Now, what's it like to be hurt deep down inside and nobody knows it? That's why you're running around doing things you shouldn't be doing, angry with the world. We don't know what's in these people's mind. Jesus reminded us. Think about these things. Judge like you want to be judged. Don't go by just appearances. There's a person inside that appearance there. What's it like to be hurt deep inside? What's it like to be sick and not knowing if you're going to get well? What's it like needing a place to live that's safe? What's it like to be in a domestic situation where your spouse is being horrible to you? What's it like dealing with drugs or marital problems? What's it like being a minority? What kind of burdens are people carrying that we don't know about? You know, in Sunday school we heard the story of a road rage incident up in Pennsylvania and the way a person reacted to Junior's driving. You know, and thankfully there was Christians in Junior's vehicle and he didn't turn around and drive over those people. Or didn't return the symbol. That's the way Christians are. There's a story about a missionary named Doug Nichols. It illustrates the way we should be. This is from the Commission to Every Nation website. Doug and Margaret Nichols had served in world evangelism for many years. They went to India as missionaries. And when he first arrived in India, he was just getting started studying the language to communicate. He got tuberculosis, and they had to put him in a sanitarium, and that was not very good. It was a filthy place, full of a lot of people. He decided he was going to do the best he could. He took the books, Christian tracts to hand out. He tried to witness to people, but they couldn't understand his language, plus they weren't really interested. He was very discouraged. He put the tracts and books out. Nobody would take them. And here he was, stuck for a long time, thought he wasn't doing his job. He'd come to India to save the lost. Well, every night at 2 o'clock, he would have a coughing spell because of his tuberculosis. And it would go on for several hours. And one night he woke up, he was coughing, he looked across the aisle, and he could see this little frail old man was in a ball, and he was on his bed and he was rolling. He was rolling like this. He was trying to get the momentum up to get out of bed. And he didn't make it. And finally just laid back and he cried. The next morning, Doug understood what had happened. The bed was a mess and Doug could smell the mess. He'd been trying to go to the bathroom. He didn't have strength to get out of bed. Patients made fun of him, the other patients. Nurses came to clean it up. One of them slapped him and said, "Don't be doing this again." And the old man just cried. Think how humiliating that was. And Doug said this, I'm quoting, "The next night about 2 o'clock I started coughing again. I looked across the way and there was the old man trying to get out of the bed once more. I didn't want to do it, but somehow I managed to get up. I walked across the aisle. I helped him stand up. He was too weak to walk. I took him in my arms and carried him like a baby. He was light, so it wasn't difficult. I took him into the bathroom, which was nothing more than a dirty hole in the floor. I stood behind him and I supported him in my arms so he could take care of himself. Then I carried him back to his bed and laid him down. As I turned to leave, he reached up and grabbed my face and pulled me close and kissed me on the cheek. And he said what I think was, 'Thank you.' The next morning there were patients waiting when I awoke, and they asked if they could read some of the books and tracts that I had brought. Others had questions about the God that I worshipped and about His Son who came into the world to die for our sins. He went on to say that in the next few weeks he gave out all of his literature. Nurses, patients, doctors came to Christ. And he said this, "Now what did I do? I didn't preach a sermon. I couldn't even communicate very well in their language. I didn't have a brilliant lesson to teach them or wonderful things to show them. All I did was take an old man to the bathroom, and anyone can do that." Someone has said, they will not care how much you know until they know how much you care. The same applies for us. They will not have a lot of interest in hearing how Jesus can help them if we hammer them instead of helping them. If you need a roof over your head and you haven't eaten, you're an unwed mother, it's been 4 days since you fed your child, you're pregnant again, you don't have a car to get a job, you need somebody to talk to, somebody comes up and says, "You know what? That's your second child. That's a sin. You're not supposed to do that. How are we going to come across?" Nope, we take them food. We take them clothes if they need it. We help them first. And then we say, "You know, Jesus wants to help you through this life. He doesn't promise to make it easy, but He will help you through this life. There is a God that loves you, and I'm here to show you His love." That's how we get attention. John 8:31-32. To the Jews who believed in Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth. The truth will set you free." Here's a truth that sets us all free. If we love all others, I'm not talking about going to the prom together kind of love. I'm talking about the agape love where we are willing to minister and serve to other people. We will be free. We will be absolutely free from prejudice, racism, preconceived stereotyping, and the need to be the center of attention. We are free to live as if it is not about us. It's about Him. And that is a freedom that releases us. 2 years ago, Gail and I went to the fireworks in Weldon. Great big field there. Man, I enjoyed that. We got there way early because I like to get places way early. We were way early. And I just sat and watched people. I like to do that. I saw different races, different ethnicities there. I saw guys holding other guys' hands. I saw women holding other women's hands. I saw one woman walking around with big ears attached to herself and a tail in the back. I don't know if this was a part of where they self-identify as an animal or something. I don't know. Old people, young people, handicapped people. I saw people smoking. And I hate the smell of that. You know, it makes my asthma stuff flare up. But I didn't run up to them and said, "Hey, you're destroying God's temple. Put that cigarette out." Yeah, but they walked by. I saw people walking around, you know how they do, with them pants down around their knees and you can see their underwear. I saw people like that. I hate that. I hate it. It's not a very godly way to dress, I know. But in the midst of all that, I remembered what I'm preaching about to you today. And as I watched all those different people, I purposely, consciously said this to myself as I looked at each one of them. I said, I am free to minister to you if you need it. I can serve you. I can love you if I get a chance. If there's something going on and you need my help, I am free to do it. Be glad to do it. And then maybe I'll get a chance to tell you about Jesus. What you believe, and I'm talking to the people that I was going down, as I was looking at them, I looked over at one guy that was really clear that he probably beat up his wife when they were in a home together because of the way he was treating her. And I looked right at him, and he didn't know what I was saying. I was doing it all. I wasn't shouting this across the field or anything, but I said, what you believe has absolutely no bearing on whether or not I can choose to be Jesus to you. Doesn't mean I wouldn't call the police if I knew he was beating his wife up. But anyway, we can choose to love those that need it the most. Because when you think about it, who are the people that need it the most? The ones that are going to hell. They need to love more than those of us that are going to heaven, don't they? They need to love. I think some Christians have just added, attributes to what their version of a Jesus disciple is. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now, I guess he's getting ready to do an invitation. We're going to do an invitation song, and I want to invite you to. I have no indication that anyone in this congregation is anything other than loving to the lost. But if you should be here and you've gotten to a point where sometimes you forget that person that cussed you out on the road, or that person that did a thing on the road to you, or you see people doing things they shouldn't do. God created them. They need our love too, so we can lead them to Christ. I encourage you to do that.